This is The Road Show, and I'm your host, David Warren. On today's program, we welcome back award-winning keynote speaker and author Barbara Glanz for the rest of the story. Actually, the rest of the stories of how people are using what God's given them to bless others. Let's say hello once again to our friend, Barbara Glanz. Good to have you, Barbara.
Thank you, David. Glad to be back.
Well, your business, or I call it a ministry, is all about spreading contagious enthusiasm. Tell us when this became your life's mission.
You know, I read a quotation when I was doing leadership and customer service training that said in order for people to be fully engaged in their work, they have to have a contagious enthusiasm about the importance of what they're doing. And I thought, you know what, that's how I feel I interact with the world. When people ask, one word to describe someone, almost always the word they use to describe me is enthusiastic. And I also love that the root words of that word are entheos, or from God. So it was a perfect way to use that as my personal motto and brand.
Well, when I think of you, I think of the first time we spoke and you introduced us to your friend. Well, you told us about him, Johnny the Bagger. Tell us again about meeting this special young man, because he has made such an impact on your business and ministry.
Oh, my goodness, yes, David. And he's, this little guy has brought hope to over 5 million people all over the world. And that just, so thrills my heart. He was in my audience. I was speaking to 3,000 employees of a large grocery store chain, and I love it when a company brings everybody, and then everyone leaves on the same page. So there were meat packers and cashiers and baggers, and all the people that work in the stores were there for this particular region. And one of the things I had talked about was how could you add your personal signature to your work? Whatever you did, what could you do to make the customer feel special? And I give my home phone number to every audience in the world, and I've always done that since I started my company. And one afternoon got a call from this young man who told me his name was Johnny, and he was a bagger in one of the stores, and he was a person of Down syndrome. And he said, Barbara, I liked what you said. And he said he got an idea. He went home that night. He said, I got an idea, and he asked his dad to help him. And so every night when he goes home, he finds a thought for the day. And he said, if I can't find one I like, I think one up. And then he and his dad type it 6 times on a page. He prints out 50 pages every single night, cuts them out, signs his name on the back, and the next day for every person's groceries he bags, he puts a thought for the day in the bag. And it was so precious, David, because about a month later, the store manager called me, and he said, Barbara, you won't believe what happened this morning. He said, when I went out on the floor about 9:30 this morning, the line at Johnny's checkout was 3 times longer than any other line.
That's
and
great.
He said, I went ballistic. I was yelling, get more people out there, get more lanes open. And he said, the customers said, no, we want to be in Johnny's lane. We want the thought for the day. So he said, who do you think is the most important person in our whole store? And he said, one woman came up and said, I only used to shop once a week, but now I come in every time I go by because I want the thought for the day. So you think about how this little guy, with a lot of strikes against him and a job most people would say isn't very important, has made it important. And about 3 months later, the manager called back again, and he said, you and Johnny have transformed our store. He said, now in the floral department, when they have an unused flower or a broken off flower corsage, he said, we used to go out and we used to just throw them away, and now they go out and they find an elderly woman or little girl and they pin it on them. And he said, one of our meat packers loves Snoopy, so we ordered 50,000 Snoopy stickers, and every time he packages a piece of meat, his meat gets a Snoopy sticker on it. I said, I don't know about dog stickers on meat, but he said, we are having so much fun, and our customers are having so much fun. And so that little guy really has given people all over the world hope that no matter what their job is, they can choose to make a difference.
Amen. And the video of Johnny the Bagger is on Barbara's website, barbaraglanz.com, Glanz, barbaraglanz.com, so you can check that out. But, Johnny and these other examples of the broken corsages, trimming them up and giving them to ladies, and also the Snoopy stickers for the meat packer there. These are great examples of what we'll be talking about today, Barbara, and that is using what God's given us, whether physical, tangible things or just great God ideas, using all of this to bless others. And today we're calling this part 2 as we continue to talk more about priceless gifts. And we'll be reading stories from your book by the same title. And I thought that a good way to start as we dive back into your book is for you to read the intro of talking about people giving the gifts of their talents. Tell us more.
Well, first of all, I think everybody has been given special gifts, so with that comes an awesome responsibility to use them. So this is what I had said about the gifts of your talents. The Bible tells us the parable of the talents. One person hid his talents, another kept them only for himself, a third person used his talents to help others, and they multiplied many times over. Which one is true of you? I have been taught that my talents are gifts, not gifts I deserve, but gifts with which I have been blessed. Therefore, I have an obligation to use those talents to the best of my ability to make a difference in this world. When I was young, I was quite a talented pianist. From the earliest years of my playing, I can remember my mother taking me to the Baptist Memorial Home, the only long-term care facility in our little town in Iowa, where I would play the piano for the residents. How they loved to hear a young person perform. I played at Sunday school, at church, and for many community gatherings over the years. Each of us is blessed with different talents, and none are more valuable or important than others. What is important, though, is how we use and develop them. Are you good at carpentry? If so, you can help repair things for older people or work with Habitat for Humanity. Are you good at baking? If so, you can share the fruits of your labor with anyone who needs cheering up. If you are an artist of any kind, you are creating a more beautiful world by sharing your talents. If you love older people or children or animals, you can find ways to add happiness and joy to a life. Even driving others or helping with errands is a special talent which you can share. Think about what you really enjoy doing and then ponder ways you can use that talent to give something back to the world.
That's a great admonition from today's guest to all of us. Barbara Glanz is here, and now I'm going to read from the section of her book, and this is the section, Gifts of Your Talents, and this comes from Kay of Indian Head Park, Illinois. And by the way, if any of these ideas appeal to you, feel free to use them, folks. Kay writes, my story begins when I moved to Washington, D.C. to put my life back together. I had recently been divorced, my eating was out of control, I was having family problems, and I knew I needed a fresh start. Of course, moving to a new city meant dealing with a new job. So during this time, I was trying to understand my new job responsibilities, deal with an eating addiction, and make a new life all at once. A major component of my new job was writing and editing technical material. My BS degree in mathematics did not prepare me to write. I was literally terrified of sitting with my blank legal pad in front of me, waiting for inspiration. Meanwhile, I began to attend 12-step meetings for my eating addiction during my lunch break. When it was my turn to speak, I told of my fear of writing and feeling like I was failing at my job. At the end of the meeting, a very distinguished, well-dressed, and very kind man approached me. He happened to be an engineer and technical writer working for the commissioner of one of the most technical agencies in Washington. He told me he had been where I was and would help me. He gave me his office number and told me to call him first thing every morning, and he would coach me through the day. What a gift! I felt saved. Day after day, I called him for instructions. Sometimes they were as simple as, get to work on time and don't leave early. Sometimes he helped me edit my work. But most importantly, he was at the other end of the telephone every day. This went on for 2 years. Kay writes, today, I live in a different city. I am recognized as being a good writer and editor. My coworkers often ask me to edit their work and help them write a variety of documents. Additionally, I seldom act on my eating addiction and have lost quite a bit of weight. Ed was my mentor and my angel during the most difficult time of my life. I will always credit him with saving my career. And then Barbara gives us a thought to ponder. You say, Barbara, have you ever been a mentor to someone? What a life-changing gift that gift of encouragement can be. Pick someone in your life right now and decide to be a mentor to them. Have you had mentors in your life who have shared their skills and talents with you? Then thank them in a concrete way this very week. And Barbara, before we go to break, let's hear one more story, and you'll read this one. This is called The Gift of Encouragement.
This is by Jody Enger from Chicago. She says, I would like to share what I did for a friend of mine to encourage him to use his talents. My friend is an artist by hobby, but he has not been inspired to pick up a brush and paint for quite some time. One day we were having a conversation, and the subject of painting came up. He suggested that he would like to switch from watercolors to acrylics, and he really should go out and get some supplies and start up again. I never heard anything more, and I occasionally asked if he had done anything with his painting, usually getting a no response. So one day, I stopped into an art store and picked up a set of new acrylic brushes and gave them to him as a gift with the following card. I hope that these brushes will inspire you to paint again. Your friend and encourager, Jody. It really meant a lot to me to give a gift like that, because I think it is the greatest feeling in the world to know that hopefully you made someone feel special, cared for, and inspired to be the best they can be. And the thought to ponder, do you have a friend or family member whose talent needs encouraging? Why not give them a new tool to whet their appetite and get their creative juices flowing again? I
love it. Barbara Glanz is with me today. I'm David Warren, your host, and we're talking about priceless gifts, using what God's given you and us to bless others. When we come back from the break, we'll talk about giving practical gifts, plus share some creative ways to bless your sweetheart. Mwah! Back after this. I'm David Warren, here with some exciting news for Oasis listeners. We have a new mobile device app. It's free, easy to download, and lets you enjoy our refreshing music and talk everywhere you go. If you have an Android cell phone, go to the Google Play Store. And if you have an iPhone or iPad, visit the Apple Store and search for Oasis Radio Network. Be an Oasis ambassador and share this news with family and friends around the world. On today's Roadshow, Barbara Glanz is back with us talking about priceless gifts. And priceless can be taken in two different ways, Barbara. One is there's such a high price on it that you couldn't even buy it if you tried. And then the other is that it's a gift that doesn't cost anything. And many gifts that we can give don't cost a thing. And you call them practical gifts.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about giving practical gifts. You're going to read some from your book.
Okay. Many of us were raised in households where there wasn't much extra money, so gifts were always practical, things like mittens, new underwear, and other things we needed. Now and then we received a luxurious gift, but most of the time that was not possible financially. It made it easy to buy a gift for someone because we just thought about what they needed, and often we even made the gift we gave. I will never forget the first year I had enough money to buy my parents a really nice Christmas gift, something they needed, but also a bit extravagant. I had just gotten a job at age 14 helping clean up in a local doctor's office. My little brothers and sister pitched in what they had saved from their allowance, and together we bought my parents a pink and black clock radio. How thrilled we were. My mother just parted with that old radio a few years ago. Even the most practical gifts can hold precious memories. Today we have become a consumer society, often accumulating things simply for the sake of having more rather than because we need them. Consequently, gifts seem to have become more and more extravagant, and it's often difficult to come up with an idea of what to give the person who has everything. Sometimes we forget that practical gifts, pragmatic, usable, common sense gifts may be the most valued of all. My 94-year-old grandmother used to say, "Give me something I can use up and throw away. I don't want any more stuff." Sometimes we get so caught up in giving special gifts that we forget the practical things which help make one's life better in a pragmatic way. You'll read about some wonderfully practical gifts in this chapter. Perhaps it will cause you to re-examine your own gift giving. Think of the people with whom you regularly exchange gifts. What might be a new and different, practical, usable gift you could give them?
All right, from the section Practical Gifts, this story comes from Rebecca Preston from Perth, Australia. And by the way, today's guest is just back from a tour of Australia. I'll ask her about that here in just a bit. But Rebecca says, my husband and I were just approached to become foster carers. We did some short respite care to start with, and we had our first placement, a 10-year-old boy for the weekend. We really enjoyed having him. After visiting your website today, barbaraglanz.com, I got a great idea. I don't know why I didn't think of it sooner. I am going to do little care packages for the children who come to stay with us. Perhaps a little box with some practical things like an amusing toothbrush, a small packet of tissues, and some fun things like a coloring book and crayons. It will be a special way for them to remember that someone cares about them. And Barbara's thought to ponder is, it is such fun to give someone a care package. It makes them feel special and as if someone really does care about them. Tell us more about these care packages, Barbara. What are they?
Well, I use the acronym CARE in a lot of ways. First of all, the metaphor of the care package that we originally gave it to people in World War II who were impacted by the war. But also we give care packages when we just recognize someone and see them as a human being. I often share the story of going into the washroom at O'Hare Airport, and there was a woman there who was cleaning, and she was all hunched over and just kind of going through the motions. So I walked up to her, and I touched her on the arm. I looked her right in the eyes, and I said to her, thank you so much for keeping this washroom clean. You're really making a difference for all of us who travel. And she just lit up, and she started cleaning with a passion. And by the time I got ready to go, she was handing towels out to all the women who were washing their hands. And so that, David, really is a care package. It's just reaching out to someone and saying, I see you. And then the book has a lot of ideas of things that are concrete care packages, little things that we can do for someone else that just make them feel, wow, somebody cares about me, and we all desperately need that in our lives.
Well, you're going to read a story now of a care package in the form of a hat. And this is a hat for John. Tell us about it.
This is by Mike Hall from Colorado Springs, Colorado. And Mike says, I have an older brother named John, whom I think the world of. John is my only living brother. We have lost 3 brothers over the years to illness and accident. John likes wearing baseball caps. They hide his thinning hair on top and make him look younger than his age. For his birthday, I invited John to lunch and presented him with a commemorative cap with the initials of our brothers and parents who live together in heaven. The cap will hopefully lift John's spirits and reinforce the fact that his family is with him always. And the thought to ponder, what a great way to give a gift that is practical yet still has very special meaning.
Here's a story from the section Practical Gifts called Hoopla. This is by John Pearson from San Clemente, California. He says, as a CEO, fun never came naturally to me. I always felt we had too much to do and too little time. But one year at my professional association meeting, I attended a workshop by Barbara Glanz on how to put fun into the workplace. In 1 hour, I got a $10,000 idea. One day, I announced that we'd provide lunch for our team of 11 in the conference room the following Wednesday. Everyone eagerly arrived on time, but instead of sandwiches in their brown bags, they found them bulging with candy. Oops, I bluffed. The deli made an error. Well, we'll have to go out for lunch. I took them to a great restaurant where I already made reservations. We ordered from the menu and had a relaxing meal, but that was just the start. After dessert, I gave everyone a sealed envelope with these instructions. In your envelope is cash that you must spend in the next 60 minutes at the mall next door. You must spend the money only on yourself. Buy whatever you'd like. Cash that you don't spend, you must return to me. We'll meet at exactly 2:30 p.m. by the fountain for show and tell. If you're late, you owe me $50. Ready, set, go. Well, staff members leaped out of their chairs and ran through the mall. Each envelope contained $50, and not one person returned any money an hour later. And before I left the mall, says John, several shoppers asked if we had any openings at our organization. He says that day is still a vivid memory for team members, and the goodwill it created lasted a long, long time. It was the right time and the right event for the right team, and they felt appreciated. Well, earlier in this particular segment, there was a story that I read from a Rebecca from Perth, Australia. And you share your contagious enthusiasm with many countries. In fact, you've been on all 7 continents, and you just recently came back from the continent of Australia. Tell us about your trip, Barbara.
Oh, it was an absolutely wonderful trip, David. We got to see so many things. I got to hold a koala, and I got to feed kangaroos, and we just had a delightful time. But one of the most special things of all was one day we were at the Daintree rainforest, which is the oldest rainforest in the world. It's up in the northern part of Australia. And we had gone on a tour, and they included lunch in the tour, but I wanted a special drink with my lunch. And so I went up to the counter in this little, very small, kind of out-of-the-way place, and got my drink and took a swallow of it while she was putting it through my credit card. Well, American Express didn't work, and she went to use my Visa card, and I have a new card with a chip, so it doesn't have the raised numbers on it, and they had the old slider thing for the credit cards, so that wouldn't work. And I said, well, can I give you American money? Because I didn't have any Australian cash. And she said, oh, we don't take American money. And so I thought, oh, no, what do I do now? I've already taken a swallow of this. The woman behind me said, oh, don't worry, honey, I'm going to buy this for you. And so she bought my drink. Well, later in the afternoon, we had stopped at a funny little shed-type place that made homemade ice cream out of all the different fruits that grow only in that part of Australia. And so everybody was waiting in line for ice cream, and my friend and I were waiting and got almost up to the counter, and we saw the sign that said cash only. And we started to get out of the line, and here came this same woman, and she had exactly the amount of money for Frank and I to get ice cream. And I was so touched by that, David. I've sent her books since I got home, but I thought, I wonder if in America anyone would have been that generous. And so that was typical of the people that we met. And the highlight for me was getting to go to a performance of Beethoven at the Sydney Opera House on our last night in Australia.
Wow. Well, that sounds very romantic. And I say that for a reason, because we're going to segue into romantic gifts for a few minutes before we take our break. And I want to read a story that was sent to you by Mike Wyan, I guess is his last name, from Naperville, Illinois. Did I say that right? Because you're from that area. Yes,
Naperville. Mike Wynn. It's Mike Wynn from Naperville.
Thank you, Barbara. Well, he writes, I was a first-year medical student and needed to buy a skeleton for my anatomy studies. You like this one. A friend who had just successfully finished his first-year anatomy course offered to sell me the skeleton he had used. He lived only a few blocks away, so I told him I would pass by his house to look at it. A few days later, I stopped by his house and rang the doorbell. His very cute younger sister came to the door. One look at her, and I forgot about his skeleton. Hers was much more interesting. That was the beginning of a lifelong romance, as a few years later we were married. By the way, I did buy the skeleton and did pass first-year anatomy. Eventually, I decided I really didn't care for the medical profession and switched careers, but I did keep the girl. We've been married now for 40 years, and Barbara's thought to ponder is there a skeleton in your closet? That's cute. Now you're going to read a story called Prince Eugene. Tell us about Prince Eugene.
Well, this is from the book Small Miracles by Jutta Hilberstam and Judith Leventhal. And they say, when it came to love, Mary Margaret Durow was blessed. For 34 wonderful years, she was married to her soulmate, Eugene. She had many pet names for him, but mostly she called him her prince. Then on October 24th, 1995, Eugene unexpectedly passed away in his sleep. Mary was devastated. They were just 3 months shy of their 35th anniversary. Days turned into weeks, which turned into months, and with the passing of time, a slow healing took place. But as Valentine's Day of the following year came around, Mary found herself inconsolable about Eugene's death. To distract herself, she took a drive downtown, ready to lose herself in the sights and sounds of the local market. Once inside the market, Mary glanced at several booths, but nothing in particular caught her eye. Then suddenly she found herself beckoned by a row of camellia bushes in the corner of the marketplace. The flowers were majestic and full bloom, pure white. They reminded her of the flowers at her wedding, and she purchased a bush without any hesitation. At home, Mary chose a special place beside Eugene's favorite shade tree to plant her new shrub. While she covered the roots with earth, she kept repeating, "Happy Valentine's Day, Eugene. Happy Valentine's Day, my prince." Then, just as she leaned on one hand to stand up, a small white tag attached to the base of the plant happened to catch her eye. She might easily have overlooked it. They must name these bushes just as they name rose bushes, Mary thought. She turned the tag in her muddy fingers. She read the name and felt the sting of a tear. There, in black ink, was the name of the pure white flower, Prince Eugene. Perhaps it was his kiss blown from beyond.
Yes.
And the thought to ponder, Halberstam and Leventhal say flowers are often the messengers of our emotions, hopes, and dreams. Through them we send and receive in this world and beyond.
And, that was also a God kiss, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, here's one more from the section called Romantic Gifts. From the book Priceless Gifts we're talking about today, the author being, I should say the collector of these stories being today's special guest, Barbara Glanz. This one's called My Favorite Father's Day Gift by Dick Brusso from Denver, Colorado. Dick writes, "A couple of years ago, shortly before Father's Day, Jenny, one of my 4 grown daughters, asked me what I wanted for Father's Day, since, quote, dads are hard to buy for. For once, I had an immediate answer. Earlier that month, my wife Joanne and I had visited an upscale women's clothing store where my youngest daughter Joy was working as a sales associate. For the fun of it, my wife decided to try on some expensive outfits, including a beautiful brown and gold silk dress that looked absolutely fabulous on her. Although I could see how much she liked it, we both realized it was a little more than we could afford. Thus, when my daughter asked me what I wanted for Father's Day, I suggested that all my daughters consider pooling their resources in order to buy me that dress for Father's Day, and that's exactly what they did. When our family gathered together on Father's Day to celebrate, my 4 daughters, Julianne, Jackie, Jenny, and Joy, presented me with my gift, wrapped, of course, in a manly-looking gift box. When I opened it, much to my wife's surprise and delight, there was that special dress she so desired. Since then, I have had the pleasure on numerous occasions of seeing my lovely wife light up a room wearing my favorite Father's Day gift. What a blessing that gift has been." What great stories these are. They're all from the book Priceless Gifts, subtitled Using What God's Given You and Us to Bless Others. It's by our special guest back with us today, Barbara Glanz, and the book is available through her website. A bunch of other books are there, plus that Johnny the Bagger video. The web address is barbaraglanz.com, BARBARAGLANZ.com. Well, I'm David Warren, your host today, and when we come back, I'll talk with Barbara about the gift of words. Back after this.
The Road Show is a listener favorite, which airs each weekday here on the Oasis Radio Network, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Central. The Road Show also has a great section on our website, oasisnetwork.org. There you'll find audio archives of select past interviews, plus guest lineup, and contact information and links to our Roadshow sponsors and its hosts. So join us for the Roadshow, whether on your radio or on your computer at oasisnetwork.org.
Here's a little bit about today's guest. She's a member of the prestigious Speaker Hall of Fame. Barbara Glanz works with organizations that want to improve morale, retention, and service, and with people who want to rediscover the joy in their work and in their lives. Using her master's degree in adult learning, she has spoken on all 7 continents and in all 50 states. And we learned in the last segment what her trip was like to Australia. And then in a previous discussion on a different road show, we found out about her trip to Antarctica. And that was quite an interesting trip you had. You want to give a recap of that trip?
Sure. I had spoken on 6 continents, and my university asked, they were sponsoring a trip to Antarctica, would I like to speak on 7? And so we took the ship and we took zodiacs from the ship to the shore, and there's an international treaty that only 50 people can ever be on land on the entire continent at one time. So there were 49 other people and me and lots of penguins. And so I spoke for about 15 minutes, David. It was cold, but it was just a delightful experience, and first speaker on record to be able to do that. So what a blessing that was.
Well, that is wonderful. Barbara, I love to hear the story of Johnny the Bagger, which you retold a little earlier, but then there's also something that I associate with you that I think is such a takeaway from every interview that you and I do, so I don't mind if we talk about it every single time we're together, and that is your 3-column chart, because if people will memorize this and have it emblazed in their memories, then it will radically change their lives and the lives of everyone with whom they come in contact. Tell us about your 3-column chart.
Well, I love this, David, and I think that this has probably been the most profound thing that I've done in my work, and it's one of the simplest. But it's a little 3-column chart that has a minus column, a 0 column, and a plus column. And down below it says your choice in every interaction. And so what this says is every time we interact with anyone, whether it's the checkout person at the line at the grocery store or the waiter that we meet at lunch or a friend or family member, anyone, if we discount that person and make them feel less important than us or our organization if we're working, that's a minus. If we just take care of their business at hand, the need they immediately have, it's really a 0 because we did not create a connection. But every time we create what I call a human-level connection, and we say to that person, I see you, you are of value, you exist, just like the story I told about being in the washroom at O'Hare, it leaves that person feeling a little bit better because they interacted with you. And so I always share my greatest challenge is going through the toll booth, but you can do it. And sometimes it's as simple as using someone's name, noticing something about them, giving them a compliment, asking if you can help beyond what you've just done, just even a comment about the weather, or they're remembering something about their lives, anything that says to that person, I'm a little better because I interacted with you. And that has become my goal of life. There's a beautiful thought from Mother Teresa that says, be kind and merciful. Let no one ever come to you without coming away better and happier. And so always trying to create those pluses.
Well, I'll call you Mother Barbara then, because I think you're right up there with Mother Teresa, Barbara Glanz. Here on Oasis, we hear a lot about the power of our words because we have a lot of ministers that have a broadcast here on the network. And, good words that we speak and even write are really gifts that we can give others. Words as gifts. Let's talk about that. And there's a portion in your book, Priceless Gifts, which we're discussing today, on page 336 that I'd like you to share.
Well, I talk first of all about words in books and how that became a very important part of our growing up, and also with my children, that I read aloud to them 30 minutes every day from the time they were in the womb until they went off to college. But I said I also value the written word as a gift we can give to others. We had 2 non-negotiables in our home as the children were growing up. One was they had to take piano lessons from age 7 to age 12, non-negotiable, and the other related to thank you notes. When they received a gift, they could open it, but it did not become theirs until they had written a thank you note. When they were little, they could scribble a pretend note, draw a picture, or tell me what to write for them. As they grew older, they learned how to write a gracious thank you note themselves. And to this day, my children write thank you notes, a gift I chose to give to them that they are passing along to others. Words can make such a difference in our lives, especially words of comfort, wisdom, or appreciation. We hear them in our inner minds over and over through the years, and when the words are written, we have the added gift of being able to read them again and again. When my husband was hospitalized with pneumonia in the midst of his long struggle with lung cancer, I had been spending 10 to 12 hours a day at the hospital, already worn out from the stress of the holidays and my deep concern for his condition. I arrived home very late one night, extremely down and discouraged, and found this message on my fax machine.
And that fax said, "Although you do not know me, I do know you through your friends and reading your inspirational book, Care Packages for the Workplace. I just want you to know that others whom you have not met yet in person love you and are thinking of you and Charlie. May God teach you and remind you to now be on the receiving line of others as you have been there for so many. May His love for you still shine in trying moments and the darkest of times, as you will always be a friend of mine. Enjoy life and all the life you bring to others. Just know that others care, and we are praying and thinking of you. Love, thoughts, and prayers, Kurt Hansen." And then, Barbara, you write, "What a precious gift of words. I had no idea who Kurt Hansen was, but his message encouraged and uplifted me to be able to go through another day. No matter what our talent with words or our educational level, we can all give the everlasting gift of a kind word." And before you read the next story, I would like to mention that the book we're reading from today, called Priceless Gifts, is dedicated to the late husband of today's guest, and his name was Charlie, and is Charlie Glanz. Barbara, read to us, please.
This is from my sister and her two daughters in Grand Junction, Colorado. During Charlie's struggle with lung cancer, my sister and my nieces sent this poem to him on a beautiful plaque. As we read these precious words every day on our kitchen table, they brought great comfort and peace. It's called What Cancer Cannot Do. Cancer is so limited. It cannot cripple love. It cannot shatter hope. It can't erode faith. It can't eat away peace. It can't destroy confidence. It can't kill friendship. It can't shut out memories. It can't silence courage. It can't invade the soul. It can't lessen eternal life. It cannot quench the spirit. It cannot lessen the power of the resurrection. And that is by Gib McKee.
Beautiful. And there's a thought to ponder, if you would read that, please.
Share precious thoughts, ideas, poems, and stories that have been meaningful to you with those who are in pain. Sometimes we think everyone has already heard or read something, yet those words might be the very words that get them through one more day.
Before we go to break, I'd like to read from a different section of the book, and this story is called The Gift of a Complete Picture by Suzanne Aiken of Arlington, Massachusetts. And she says, "While sorting out family pictures in an attempt to organize and preserve cherished memories for myself and my children, I noticed that there were very few pictures of my husband and me together. This was mainly because we were on trips with each other or with the children, and naturally, someone had to take the snapshot, so someone was always left out. This made me very sad since my husband had died recently, and I deeply regretted not capturing the memories of us together. I decided that part of my personal quest to be an angel on earth would be to give couples and families the gift of a complete picture. As they grew older, families would be able to sit down to a whole album with every member included. Soon after, I happened to see a couple with their 3 young children at the Nutcracker Ballet at Christmas time. They all looked so beautiful together, coordinated outfits, bows, and ties all matching. The father was about to snap a picture of them on the stairs, so I offered to take it for him so that he could join them. He hemmed and hawed so much that his wife stopped coaxing him and looked rather embarrassed. I quietly and gently told him about my small mission, that my husband had died suddenly, and how sad I was that I didn't have more pictures as a family. I told him how beautiful they all looked together, and that someday, when they were old and gray, they would cherish this memory. I could see by his face that I didn't make him sad so much as I made him stop and think about his initial resistance." Suzanne writes, "Now, wherever I am, when I see a couple or family taking a picture, I offer to snap it for them. It brings me great joy, and the happy look on their faces is rewarding too. I also pass on pictures that I have taken of friends and family for their collections, since I have learned the hard way how precious a photo can be." These are lovely, lovely stories, all contained in the book, Priceless Gifts. Barbara Glanz back with us for part 2 as we're reading more stories from the book, and it is available on her website, barbaraglanz.com, spelled BARBARAGLANZ.com. I'm David Warren, your host today, and when we come back, Barbara and I will talk about the importance of receiving a gift graciously. We'll be back after this.
A refreshing place to be. The Road Show.
I'm David Warren, Program Director at Oasis Radio Network and one of the hosts of this podcast. All of our hosts enjoy hearing from you, our listening family, so drop us a note. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and you'll receive new episodes on your mobile devices. And now, back to the show. On today's program, I'm David Warren, so enjoying my time as I always do when Barbara Glanz joins us. And Barbara, you are such a gift to the world, and I just want to thank you for sharing your gift with all of us today. I know we'll say goodbye here in a bit, but I didn't want any more time to go by without us handing you a rose, so to speak, a virtual rose on the radio today.
Well, thank you, and I hand it back to you, David, for the difference you make every day. So I am honored to know you.
Well, thank you, Barbara. In the introduction of the book we're talking about today, your book, Priceless Gifts, you discuss how our patterns of either sharing or hoarding what we have is often learned by observing our parents. If you would, please take a couple minutes and comment on the importance of training our children to be givers.
You know, I think that my mom was the best role model I could possibly have had for learning how to give. Often we would go to the flower shop, and there was always things that were on sale, or we didn't have a lot of money. But she would buy a plant or some flowers, and then we would go to someone's home and just anonymously leave them at their doorstep. And, of course, in a small town, you could do that. Maybe today you'd have to get them inside somehow. Mm-hmm. And then, as I mentioned in one of the stories, we griped about it. But once a month, we would go out to the Baptist Memorial Home, and we would stop at the Dairy Queen. And in those days, Dairy Queen was a nickel a cup. And we would buy 30 or 40 cups of Dairy Queen. And then my brothers and sister and I would take them around to all of the residents of the home, and I would then play the piano, and the boys would sing, and we, as I said, we griped about it, but it really taught us a wonderful lesson about reaching out and giving, and I'm so grateful for that with my mom and dad.
And now your children are givers as well.
They are. As I mentioned to you off air, my 15-year-old granddaughter was just diagnosed with leukemia. She's in Seattle. And she called me the other day. She was asked to have a Make-A-Wish. And she said, Grandma Barbara, I don't want to do something for myself. So I love animals. I'm going to do something special for animals. And I was so proud of her for that, David, because that, is really giving your gift in a special way.
So it's not just passed down to your children, but now to your grandchildren. And what a lovely gesture on her part. And we're praying for your granddaughter.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much.
Well, Barbara Glanz's goal for this book, Priceless Gifts, is to inspire the rest of us to do two things. First of all, become more deeply committed to sending those metaphorical care packages to others on a daily basis. And that's the giving element there, but also to become more aware of the metaphorical care packages that we receive every single day of our lives. And that's the receiving side there. Barbara, if you would, read some from your section from the book, Priceless Gifts, and this is Gifting the Giver.
The Bible says it's more blessed to give than to receive, but that's very difficult for many of us, particularly those of us who are born givers. My friend John Blumberg puts it this way: we have so often heard that it's better to give than receive, and what a joy it is to give. But sometimes we get so focused on giving that we forget how to receive. So often we may have a feeling that we need to pay the giver back, or simply say, oh, you shouldn't have done that. Receiving sometimes takes a dose of humility. The truth is that in receiving, we actually give. We give joy to the giver. The next time someone gives you a gift, just be ready to give them one of the greatest gifts of all. Receive it, and with joy.
And you say, amen. Well, as we close, Barbara, I'd like for you to read one more passage from the book Priceless Gifts, and it's about treasure gifts. Tell us about these treasure gifts. You also call them keepsakes.
You know, treasure gifts are things that have been your treasure and you give to someone else, or someone else's treasure and they share it with you. So here's what I wrote. Have you ever received a gift that was someone else's treasure, or that became a special treasure to you? When I was 9 years old, my beautiful, courageous Aunt Gretchen died of cancer at age 23. The entire family was devastated, especially my grandfather and grandmother. Because I was the oldest grandchild, I became very close to them in many ways, I think filling some of the huge void left by the loss of their youngest child. I remember that I thought Gretchen was a princess, and I wanted to be around her whenever I could. She was homecoming queen at her high school, always the most popular one in the room with her gorgeous figure and long, dark, curly hair. I was always a bit on the chunky side, so Gretchen was my idol. One of her possessions, which I admired for years, was a sterling silver charm bracelet overflowing with charms, all of which had a special story. She wore it every day and often let me look at it and told me stories about each charm. When I was 12 years old, my grandmother gave me that charm bracelet as her special grown-up gift to me. I know now how difficult that was for her to give away, because it was the last small vestige of Gretchen which she had kept. However, to me it was the best gift I had ever received, because I knew how special it had been to Gretchen. I wore it for many years and always felt it was a symbol of my guardian angel. When our first daughter was born, guess what I named her? Gretchen, of course. And when she turned 12 years old, I passed the treasured charm bracelet on to her, along with all the stories I could remember about each one of the charms. She rarely wears it because it has long since gone out of style, but it is lovingly kept in her special treasure box as a memory of her namesake. What treasure do you have that you could pass on to someone else?
And Barbara, you have a doll collection. Tell us about these keepsakes.
When I first started speaking, and then I was teaching English as a second language, often the people from other countries, when they would be going back to their country, would say, what could they send me? And I knew they didn't have a lot of money, and I always loved dolls, so I'd say, just send me just a little doll from your country. And so that sort of began my collection. And then as friends traveled, they would bring me back dolls, and as I travel, I get a doll in each country. And so it's very precious to me, because each doll is a memory of either a special person or a special experience. And one of the things I've done in my will is I've listed all my very, very special friends, and they each get to come and choose 2 or 3 dolls from my collection. So that has been just a joy for me.
You know, Barbara, there was a man named Charles that has passed away, a dear, dear friend of mine, and his best friend was his sister. And after Charles had passed and the funeral had taken place and a few weeks had gone by, she called some of his closest friends to come by her house, and she had laid out all of his ties and said, pick your favorite as a memento. Just a thought. Just a thought.
I did that with my husband's baseball caps.
Barbara, it's all about using what God's given us to bless others, and we've all been given so much. So it's time to bless others. Anything you'd like to say as we say goodbye?
You know, one of the things that when I wrote this book, and that has been a lesson throughout my life, it's not big things. we don't have to do big things. It's those small little things that we do every day. It's those little thoughtful moments that we take the time to send a card or write a note or make a phone call, or I keep little things that I collect all over just to stick in an envelope to somebody. When I was in Croatia, the priests made little tiny wooden crosses on a little tiny band of beads, and so I stick these in an envelope, and it's just so much fun, to be able to just know that you're giving someone a little bit of joy.
Well, today has been part 2 of our 2-part series on Priceless Gifts. That is the name of the book by today's special guest, Barbara Glanz, and it's available on her website by that same title, that same name, barbaraglanz.com, spelled B-A-R-B-A-R-A, Glanz, Glanz.com, and you can check out the Johnny the Bagger story, which, as they say, went viral. That's a good thing in this case, though, Barbara, so people can check that out. And tell us about some of the other goodies on your website and how it, quote, spreads contagious enthusiasm. That's your motto.
Well, a lot of my work is in corporate America and with people who are working. So a number of the books, there's care packages for the workplace, there's care packages for your customers, there's care packages for the home, which is another book that your audience may enjoy, that has all kinds of ideas of ways to, I called it, to regenerate spirit where you live. And lots of things, again, that don't cost any money that you can do in your family and in your community to make a difference. And then one quick book for everybody, 180 Ways to Spread Contagious Enthusiasm, and that's, again, full of ideas. So all of my books are idea books, and I think we all are kind of in survival mode today, and so we need what can we do immediately to make a difference for others. So that's been my mission, David, in all my work.
And we accept the challenge, Barbara. Barbara Glanz has been with us, and again, that web address, barbaraglanz.com, spelled BARBARAGLANZ.com. And again, what a gift you are to us and to the world, Barbara. Thank you so much for joining us for both of these programs. So for Barbara Glanz, I'm David Warren, and what has it been? Yet another great road show. You've been listening to The Road Show. If you'd like to write to us, here's our address. The Road Show, P.O. Box 1924, Tulsa, Oklahoma, 74101. Our email address is roadshow@oasisnetwork.org. The views of today's guest aren't necessarily those of this station, but we do appreciate and thank our guest for spending this time with us. The Road Show, an Oasis Network presentation.